Hello, this is James from Mode Lighting, and today we're going over the subject of events and understanding them. So in front of me here I have a very simple program, and we have three scenes that have been set up. One that sets the levels in a room to 100%, another one to 50%, and another one to 0%. And at the moment these scenes exist, but they aren't actually triggered from anywhere. And the things that can obviously do the triggering are plates, contact inputs, sensors, timers, things like that. All of these create events. So let's take a quick look at a keypad in a little bit more detail. Okay, as we can see here, we're in the spanner page for the keypad, and we have a bunch of different possible events going across here that we can open up for our keypad to give us different options. At the moment, we've just got the standard press command. So anything that happens will instantly happen on a press. The next one down would actually be only when the button is held. The next is a short press, so when this one is activated, now what would happen is that unlike the standard press function, this only occurs if the button is not held, so it needs to be a short press. And the last one here we have is release after held, so this gives us our last option. And we'll go to OK. So now the program has updated, and we can see on this button one now all these extra button functions are going to occur or are possible to occur. So let's have a look and see if we can do a very simple example for starters. So in this case, if you do a single press on a button, which with this green recall, and it's not held, the scene 1 will trigger. But what I want to do now is that if you were, for example, wanting to hold the same button, that would then trigger the off. So let's test this now and just see if my initial example here works. So we'll go through to the control page and we'll have a look at the keypad. So if I do a single tap on the scene, the button now illuminates. If I press and hold, we can see that now that the off command is going on. So now we have managed to put more than one function on a button. If we now go back through to the configuration page, I can show you that things are similar when you get to things like a contact input module. I can now hit the spanner option, and then we can see that there are similar options here. I can now tick all of these, and we just have a few extra options in here that we can view. So yes, just going from the top, we've got only happens if released. We have the second one is our standard press. The next one down is held on, so only happens if held. Then short press, and then only happens on the release of hold. And again, the system has updated, and I could do the same example as I did above, and that would work now from that contact module. This is a fairly simple example and probably not of real world use. Let's have a look at something that's a bit more in line with what you would do in the real world. Okay, so now I've set up some default scenes for a room, and basically we're going to activate this keypad and have it all work in the order that would make sense. So for now, because we've got all the press commands are already showing, we don't have to worry about it too much. We can just literally start putting the recalls on each of these buttons to actually start the process. And then looking carefully at our keypad here, we can see the bottom button on the left hand side is number 9. So I'm going to miss out the other two in between. But now let's look at these other two buttons on the other side. 6 and 8, which are separated off here, I would use those for a dedicated raise and lower. So let's break this down a little bit, and we're going to make a few options extra open for these two buttons. So we find our numbers 6 and 8, and I'm going to untick these extra options here so that we can actually see them in our program. I want this keypad to control the lights in such a way that if the lights are off, they're not triggered. For example, if I change in scene 4 here, circuit number 4, and I make that 0%, I want these raise and lower buttons to only affect the lights that are actually on. Now, a lot of that's already built into eDin Plus to do all of that for you. So first things first, I want to make up another scene that we're going to use with just to tell us what channels can and can't be faded in these scenes. And I'm going to call that scene fade. Now, for example, on button 6, if I go to the held, I'm going to go through my list of things here and I'm going to find fade up. And so this would start a fade on the pushed and held command. And then what I would do as well is on the other side here, we've got on the release, and we would need to stop that fade. So this would make the button work in the way you would expect, is that it's doing starting the fade as the button is pressed, and on the release it then stops at whatever point we are. And we can do the same here for button 8, but we're going to just do that as a lower. So here we go again. So on this one I'm going to do lower the level, and we can also go through here and go through and find the stop fade. Okay, so what we have here is something that would absolutely work now in a room. The 6 and 8 would control the lights correctly, bringing them up and down as required. So far we have been dealing with non-compound events. These are specific, they will happen and they don't have any extras going on behind them. But to make life a little easier, we have actually made some that can be placed on the press command that can then deal with creating this combination. So let me remove this here and show you what that would look like. So here we go. So looking at the standard press, I can go here and here we go. We've got raise. So that is a compound event that basically is, you put on this standard press command here, but is literally doing the same as what we have down here. It's just a way of making your life easier. So if something's happening programming wise that you don't understand, you can always be far more discreet about what you're doing, or you can use the shortcuts of some of these compound objects to make your life a little easier. Okay, so we've gone through the initial ideas of what events are, but now we need to start describing in a little more detail what each of these things do. So in this in the box here for button 1, I can start looking at the list and go through it for you. So first on the list we have standard recall. This will literally, no surprise, recall all of the levels here over a fade time of the scene. Next on the list we have more recall, recall off. So this one gives you the other option of it will affect these channels, and on that press it will send them all to 0% over a fade time of, in this example, 3 seconds. The next option is fast recall. This allows for a scene to be recalled at a quick rate of say 5 seconds instead of the fade time, which could be, in this example, is 60 seconds. This is usually used in a restaurant, for example. This scene normally would be triggered at a certain time of day and it takes over a minute to get there. But if I'm actually using the keypad, the real way we want to do it would be to have it happen fairly quickly. So fast recall would just mean forget the fade time, go to this level over a quick period. Okay, so the next one after that would be recall back on. This will recall the scene again back to whatever the last level it was faded to was. So if this had been faded up and down from say our buttons 6 and 8 that we described before, and it was now at 70%, this recall back on will actually make it come on at 70% and not the scene levels that are currently stated in here. The next one on the list is recall raise. So this would literally on a single tap bring all the levels to 100%, but if you were to press and hold, it would raise the current levels of whatever circuits are in this scene. So if they're low, they would start to rise instead of just going straight to full. And the same would be true here of recall lower, except obviously it would start to lower the levels of those particular circuits. Recall off. Now this would actually, on a single press, the lights would come on at the level in the scene at 100%, and if you were to hold, it would turn the scene off. Recall impulse. This one is a compound object again, and this is doing quite a few things in one go. So on a single press it will turn the lights on, and a single press again would turn the lights off. But anytime you were to do held function or hold the button, you would start to lower the level of the lights. And if you released and held them again, you could start to raise them. So this is how you can do quite a lot for a channel off of one button if need be. Recall on off. Now this is basically a toggle scenario. So on a single button here, press once, the lights come on to the level of the scene. Press again, the lights would go off. Raise and lower. Now this would not turn the lights on or off. This would only do hold and the lights would lower in level, then hold again, the lights would raise again. Standard toggle. This is basically single press for on and single press for off. However, this can be affected by fades, so this number here won't actually mean much if the circuit has actually been played around with from another possible source. It's a way of turning back on at the last toggle level. Standard impulse. Now this is another one that can be used usually for single channels, but could be used for more. Again, this does very similar to that recall impulse that we talked about. Single press for on, single press for off, and then hold to raise and lower. However, when you actually turn the lights off and back on again, they will come back on to whatever the last faded level that you had done with this button. So it's a way of memorizing a level for on a single button press, rather than the recall one, which was return always back to this percentage. Raise, this will literally, if the lights were at a lower percentage, so say example they were already at 50%, if you press and hold the button, then it would start to raise them, and the point you release the button would be the point at which it would stop. The same will be true, but just in reverse for the lower command. So the next one is nudge. This will nudge the level of the scene up by 5%, but we can actually alter how much that actually does adjust things. So if I go through here to the options page and I go over to parameters, we can actually see that at the moment nudge step size in percent is at 5%. This could be adjusted. The same will be true of the opposite where we have nudge down. The next ones on the list are, we have a fade up. This will again just literally would just start to raise, but as this is not a compound object, there would be no way of stopping it. So again, we would have to go back to combinations to make this work correctly. So let's do that example again. Open up the button, select each of these so that we have all of the button type presses there are. So in a real world solution would actually be on the held, and then the stop of the fade would be at the bottom there. Now that's the same process that would work for fading down, and you also have another option where you could have fade up and down. Now this would just would bounce, would go down and back up and allow you to stop at any point in between. And that should give you an overview of all of the standard event types in eDin Plus. Thank you again for watching this video, and please subscribe to the channel.